Grace and mercy and peace, glory and power be to you from God, our Father, and our ruling King, the Lord and Savior. Brothers and sisters, those who worship the King of Kings. These are great hymns, aren't they? When they really get down to it, you sing, you just want to burst forth and sing, God, you are ruler, you are King. You are the one over all things. And we look forward, that's really what gets us to look forward to Jesus coming back. And being able to say, Lord, my life. Well, let me just say this. I'm going to say two things today to really focus on, two questions to really focus on and to consider in our own hearts and minds. Number one, if someone was to ask you, all right, you believe that Jesus is King, you people worship him, what is it? What is the most important thing that you would want me to know about Jesus reigning, Jesus rule? You tell me. I want you to consider that. I want you to consider that for the next few minutes. And the other thing I want you to think about, maybe not so much as a question, but just in your own hearts and minds. If we believe what we've just read in God's Word, just a little snippet there, and especially what Paul wrote in our, really summarizing it in his letter to the Colossians, if you believe that, if we believe that the whole situation about Jesus can change our life, it is a life-changing belief. And it really is something that makes us look at everything in the world, everything that happens in a completely different way than we otherwise would. And so I would suggest to you, is what we're focusing on today, life-changing to you. And that means day after day after day. Because let's face it, we'll be singing in a few weeks, Joy to the World. And one of those verses talks about Jesus ruling. He rules the world with truth and grace. How often do we talk and sing about Jesus ruling, not just in these hymns, but even in the carols, talking about Jesus as King. He rules the world. We say that. And it's really an earth-changing, a life-changing situation for us. That's what I want you to think for these few moments as you meditate. What's the circumstances if we look at what Paul wrote? If we look at what Paul wrote in his epistle, what are the circumstances? He's writing from house arrest in Rome. And he's writing to a group of people in modern-day Turkey, Colossae, to the Colossians. And what has happened within that congregation, and it would be developing in that time frame as well throughout that part of Europe and the Middle East, there would be a group that would be coming in, especially filtering into the Christian church, in which they were teaching that you have to have some kind of secret wisdom. Jesus is good, but we'll give you some other kind of wisdom, something that will really bring you to a new level of consciousness. And part of that consciousness would even be involving worshiping angels. And it would be some kind of ascetic life too, that get away from the material kinds of things. And don't even think about things that are physical. Get away from that, because there's stuff that's bad in the world. It would really be something like today if somebody came and said, well, let's combine elements of some of the Eastern religions like Hinduism and Buddhism. You throw in a little of what we used to call New Age and maybe Wiccan, white magic kind of things that people talk about today. Throw in some Christian Science or Scientology. And you put all that in, and you're going to have what the people were starting to get into even back then. Some kind of mystic thing. And so Paul writes to that. And if we believe what Paul says, and I hope we do, maybe you've noticed it, and when you have an opportunity to study this, and we when we preach or talk, have it as a lesson over the years and you hear it, you have to notice one thing in there that Paul mentioned a number of times. The little word, all. And And then there's one time in the English he came up with everything, which in the Greek is the same Greek word that Paul has been using all throughout. In 8 times, Paul uses the word all, everything, in 7 verses to emphasize what? You people, as you get infiltrated by all this false kind of wisdom, false kind of spirituality, false kind of angel worship, and all this other kind of stuff that you're getting into, I want you to be able to see who Jesus Christ is and his rule. And if you want to summarize what Paul was saying, it means that when Jesus rules, and I kind of mentioned that already this morning in the introduction, he really rules. It's ruling and ruling and ruling over all. Now, how does Paul describe that? Paul describes that in this way. If you're following along in the words that are printed in the bulletin, and even thinking about them as we go along, Paul wrote in verse 15 of chapter 1 of Colossians, the Son is the image of the invisible God. The image of the invisible God. The Greek word there for image is a word that when the Greek person saw that, it would be equating what was in that image. The symbol of the image represents and really reflects the reality of what that image is looking at. For instance, if you take out a coin, and you take out the penny and you look at the image of Abraham Lincoln, that image is you'd be looking at it and saying, oh, that's Abraham Lincoln. When the Greek is seeing that, and when Paul is saying, the Greek person is looking at that and saying, this is the image of the invisible God. When you see Jesus, and what those early Christians were able to see, a visible Jesus, even though in humility. When you see Jesus, you're looking at the invisible God. That's incredible. And a lot of this is just stepping back and saying, when I see Jesus, I see God. Paul went on to write also that, for God was pleased to have, and here's one of the verses, to have all his fullness dwell in him. Image of God, that's verse 19, to have all his fullness. Like water, when you pull it into a cup and it overflows, all the fullness that is there of the Father is there in Jesus Christ. When you want the Father, you see the Father, you see the Son. When you want to see power of the Father, you're going to find it in the Son. When you want to find love of the Father, you're going to find it in the Son. And it's all. Everything there is about God is going to be found in Jesus Christ. Now look at go back to verse 15. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. There's the word all again. He is in the beginning and the firstborn from the dead. He also wrote in verse 17 that Jesus is before all things. All right, honey, what is all those things? He's before all things. There's the all again. He's before all things. Everything was created. All those things. What's that firstborn that Paul is talking about? It could mean 2 things. Firstborn could mean he's the first one of others who were born and would be coming into play. And others would come after that, like sequentially. Or, in the Greek mind, the word is used often, it doesn't mean that. It means someone who has authority. Someone who is ruling. Someone who is the one who is able to be the source of something. Which, of course, is what Paul is writing here when he says that Jesus, he is in the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead. Jesus wasn't the first one to be raised from the dead. He had already Lazarus was raised from the dead. So we're not talking about sequentially, numerically. Paul is talking about when you see Jesus, and the Greek mind would know this, you're talking about someone who has authority over, is the source of life. He's in the beginning. He's before anything was created. There was never a time that God the Son never existed. He always existed. He was there when things started to be created because he was the one. He was the one who was involved. If you're talking about human life, if you're talking about things in the universe, Jesus is the source, the He is the firstborn of life. He is the one who has supremacy over all those things. Because Paul goes on to write, for in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. Look at all the words, all. 17, he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. You look at everything around us and why the world continues as it is. It's all about Jesus Christ. It's all about Jesus Christ. Things are held together. He's before things. He created things, whether visible and invisible, from atoms to angels. Jesus created them all. He's involved in a part of them. And what does he do it for? Because we heard in our text, he does it as head of the church. He does all these things for the sake of the gospel. All right. Now I'm going to ask again, go back to that question I had asked. If someone came up to you and said, what is the most important thing about Jesus Christ and his rule to you? And you can talk about it, and I know you're Christian, you believe the biblical Christians, you believe that God is ruling over all things, that he's got everything under his control, that he's involved in creation, he continues to preserve it. So you tell me, what is it? What would you answer that person? And I hope for each one of us, as astounding as it is to believe what Jesus, who he is, and what he does in creation, is what he does. He's the head of the church. And proclaiming the gospel, which goes back to the gospel message. A bruised reed he won't break. It's to send out that gospel message. And I hope that each one of us would say, and even if we're talking verbally to somebody or not, when we go home tonight, or whenever we're putting down resting for the day, I can say that, Lord, the great thing about your rule is that you rule in mine. Have a heart for God's rule. Have a heart for Jesus' rule in your heart. And that's what Paul wrote at the beginning of our text when he said, for he has rescued us from the dominion of darkness and brought us into the kingdom of the Son he loves, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. You're in the dominion of darkness. Without Jesus Christ, there's no hope. There's no hope for the forgiveness of sins. We are redeemed. We are trapped to be redeemed, to be bought back from our slavery to sin. Does it make a difference? Does it make a difference to believe, God, the greatest thing that I have, the greatest need I have is what's going on in my soul. And Lord, every single one of us, at one time were apart from God, and yet Jesus, as the King, brought me back into that through his rule in my heart, working through the gospel message, through baptism, and he brought me into his kingdom, and therefore, Lord, I want to be able to praise you and be able to worship you as King of Kings. And now when we sing, even the carol, we want to make room for him in our heart. It's not something that we do ourselves. But Lord, you're reigning in there. I want you to still rule. I want you to be a part of my life. So what does all this mean? You put it all together. And what does it mean? It means, I hope you think, that this isn't hyperbole that we're talking about. That Jesus Christ is involved in every aspect of the universe. He is involved in every aspect of what happens in our planet. He is in every aspect of what happens in our homes, in our cities. And he's the one that has every aspect of what's going on in our hearts and in our souls. This is why we constantly look to him and need to look to him for the forgiveness of sins and step back and say, Lord, let me have room for you in my heart. Because you are King of Kings and Lord of Lords. What does it mean on a practical basis? It means one thing as far as our life. We don't have to be afraid. Do we comprehend that? We don't. It's amazing. All the worry, all the things that we... Yes, God wants us to be good stewards in the world. God wants us to be even people who are involved in our communities and our voting. But when it comes down to it, all the things that can happen, I don't care whether it's environmentally or whether it's the nations fighting against nations, I don't care if it's nuclear weapons pointed at us, I don't care what it is, Jesus ultimately is saying to each one of us, don't worry about it. Remember that all these things are being guided by me for the sake of the church. Am I worried about my job? Am I worried about my promotion? Am I worried about my sickness? Am I worried about the physical things that are going on? Am I worrying about even things that, Lord, I have no control about it, but I worry about it? Am I concerned about family members that are struggling? There are reasons we may have to do that too. But are they such a thing that I go through with so much angst in my life, so much worry, then all I would say to each one of us is to say, part of the way to have peace is to step back and read this section again of Colossians, or the gospel, how Jesus works. Jesus, you're going to bring about only what is good in my life. I don't have to worry. If I can't make ends meet, Lord, then Lord, I know I want to follow you. You'll be with me. I need to be able to use my gifts to work, but Lord, I don't need to be so upset and stressed out because then we don't believe anything Paul's saying. Take all the alls away. And on the same token, if things are going well, and if I have everything that I need, Lord, let me recognize that that's not what my life is about, that that's not where my source of joy is. But you think in each of your lives, what are you worried about? What college you're going to? What's going to happen? I don't get along with the kids at school, or the kids may be bullying with me. There are things we have to deal with. But there are answers to all those things. But it starts with knowing, hey, I have God, I have others that I can go to that God has given me in my life, and so I am... You know the expression, don't sweat the little things? Why are we sweating anything? Or don't sweat the big things? Why even, we don't have to, don't sweat the little things, whatever, now I'm getting confused what it is. Don't sweat it at all.